Hello, hello, hello. Hello, folks. This is Shyam Sadasivan with my third LinkedIn Live, and I have a fantastic guest here for you today. I got to know him about 6 months ago. It was a very serendipitous kind of meeting on LinkedIn, and it's gone places from there. And I know him and his team as partners and colleagues in doing some wonderful work that they're doing in their beautiful organization called Stoa School. And he's here today to tell you and all of us how to get startups to chase you. If you are someone looking for a role in a startup, and if you are looking for moving your career in the direction of getting to be in a startup and work in a startup, in a hot startup, you're in the right place today. So, without much further ado, I'm going to be welcoming Aditya Kulkarni into the room in just a moment. Hi, Aditya. How are you?
Hey Sham, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, man. Great to see you. Great to see you.
Thank you for
Welcome.
having me. Yeah, really. I mean, this is my first LinkedIn live.
Oh, is that
So
right?
yeah. So I've done a bunch of Zoom events, but
Yeah, yeah.
like this is the first time I've gone live on LinkedIn. So
Oh, that's outstanding. Wow, that's great. We have kind of 20 people with us so far, but we do have a
sure.
lot of people who signed up. So we'll give them all a few minutes to kind of come in and get us going. Folks, welcome, welcome. This is my third LinkedIn Live and Aditya's first. So clearly, we are also learning along the way of
Yeah,
setting
yeah,
this up.
yeah.
We're having a great chat while we were setting up our mics
Yeah,
and
Just
videos and
just
things like
trying not to be dinosaurs. Yeah.
trying
Like
not to be dinosaurs. I mean, we have both went to BITS Pilani. When did you graduate?
I graduated in 2009. So 5 to 9, 4 wonderful years in Pilani campus. So
Yeah, so did I. I mean, I graduated in 2001 and then went to the US, the year of 9/11. It was a tough time to graduate, but I have very fond memories.
I'm
Very
sure
fond.
like you were screened at the airport or what? Like
No, I went before 9/11 happened. So
uh,
I went in the summer of 2001, and then of course 9/11 happened. And after that, I mean, I only know kind of post 9/11 America. So it was a very, very different time.
got it. So about 20 years, yeah? So 20 years since you graduated, I guess.
Yeah, 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 yeah. They're talking about a reunion this year, so we're
Yeah,
gonna we're gonna see how that goes.
sure.
Yeah, man. Don't. Yeah, you're saying dinosaurs, 20 years. Okay, I'm gonna change track completely. Okay, I'm gonna change track completely and talk about the topic today, right? I was talking to you earlier, right? And figuring out on WhatsApp what to call this session. And on your website itself, you say, how to get startups to kind of find you or chase you. First of all, that really works for me for multiple reasons. One is because I think generally the kind of push strategy of pushing out CVs and resumes and things, that's really changing. The world is changing. You need to attract
Hmm.
people to you. So I love the way that you've positioned it. So tell us, how do you get startup jobs to chase you?
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at it from like fundamentally very basic economic concept, right? Supply and demand. Uh, it is very clear that there are high growth, high paying jobs out there. And it is also very clear that there are not enough people to sort of fill in those roles.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it is also true that there are a lot of job seekers in the market, right? And somehow this marketplace is not clearing well, right? Like the marketplace is not liquid in some sense. There are a bunch of folks who will, if they sort of start looking out at opportunities, they'll have like 10 offers, and then there will be 10 folks who will not have even one offer, right?
Yeah.
And I think Raj, who is my co-founder, he said this very beautifully. He said, like, वो दुनिया में दो ही तरह के लोग हैं, right?
Okay.
There are one who are chasing jobs, and the other are people who are getting chased
Right.
for jobs, right? And it sort of stuck with me, right? Like, and what is true about this second set, people who get chased, is bunch of things, right? So that chasing could, I mean, people could be chasing you because you have some shiny medals. So you come from an IIT, IIM, and
Yeah.
so on and so forth. Or it could be because you have some proof of work, which means,
Mhm.
you put out something out there, you joined the early stage company and grew along with the company. You were like among like the first 50 hires, let's say at Flipkart, or And there are so many funded companies or startups which have really scaled massively, right? Like, so for example, there are these new badges of honor. So for example, if you worked at Freshworks, it
Mm-hmm.
it has now become a badge of honor, right? If you have worked at Ola, it is another badge of honor. If you have worked at Amazon, it's a badge of honor. And it doesn't really matter what role you sort of performed at some of these companies, because people do trust that the training systems that these companies have is amazing, right? Like if you ask about, say, Netflix culture or Amazon culture, people would assume that anybody who has been to those places gets something, they get things done, right? They
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
they have
Yeah.
imbibed the values and culture of these places.
Yeah.
So these are, I mean, fundamentally it comes down to just two things, right? So you either need those shiny medals, or you need proof of work. You need something to
Oh.
show. It's as simple as that, really. And especially I've seen this on LinkedIn, right?
Mhm.
Uh, is people have, again, if you do a simple 2x2 in a consultant sort of
Yeah.
thing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
If somebody is looking out for opportunities, and if you draw them up on a 2x2 scale, and one axis is, let's say, hustle, and the other axis
Okay.
is skills or competence, let's put it that way.
Okay. Okay.
So competence versus hustle. Now, if you don't have competence and if you don't have hustle, then nothing can happen to you, right? But
Yeah.
if you are in the other two quadrants where you have one of those things,
Mm-hmm.
then you can actually do something. I mean, and if you have both the things, you're already being chased for jobs, right? So
Okay.
uh,
When you say
if
hustle, what do you mean? Competence, I get. Competence is skill. Hustle, is that an action? Is that something you're doing? Is you what do you mean by hustle in this
Yeah,
context?
so hustle could be something like this, right? Like writing a good cold email and offering value. So a lot of people who would write in, I mean, there are a bunch of workshops and bunch of people talking about, hey, you should be cold emailing founders and you should be
Mm-hmm.
cold emailing this and that person. And people would sort of, cold email and then say, hey, and it's all about me. मैं ये कर सकता हूँ, not really
Right.
telling me what they can do for me, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So hustle really is ability to write cold email and then sort of also offer value,
Yes.
right?
Okay.
So for
I
example,
love that.
I remember this person who got internship at Cred, right? And it happened on LinkedIn. He did some fantastic animation, some 2D animation around Cred and Cred's branding and so on and so forth. That kind of went viral. That is hustle,
Right.
right? And the thing about hustle is any new tactics
Mm-hmm.
get old very quickly, right? So
Right.
like a year back, if you're emailing founders, it will be
Mm-hmm.
like, oh wow, like people like, this person has hustle. Now today, if you're just cold emailing, I'm like, I get 100 cold emails a day. Like it's not a hack anymore, right? So
Yes.
the standard for hustle, the bar for hustle, it just keeps going up and up, right?
Yeah.
Because whatever is common knowledge, it's no more a secret, right? Like it's no more the secret
It's
sauce.
out there. It's out there,
It's
and
out
it's
there.
public, and it's. And I love the way you said. You said it's about value, isn't it? It's not just about moving.
Yeah.
Vikrant in the chat says, Vikrant Mehra says it's initiative. And is it initiative? If you take initiative, yes, but then the hustle needs to do something for the other person, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the bar keeps going up, right? Like, so
Yes.
what is the good kind of hustle yesterday is not the good kind of hustle today.
Yeah.
On the competence side, I think it just comes down to getting things done, right? And it is so
Yeah.
surprising. And I work with, and I'm sure you were in US, and
Mhm. That's
we continue to work with few contractors or consultants who come from US, and
Mhm.
I'm just amazed by their ability to get work done, right? Like we have this intern, she's a first year student at Rutgers or
Mhm.
whatever that university is called, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Rutgers is fine. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And I think she has one of the best productivity, right? Or the ability to get things done. Like I'm just amazed, like where did she pick that? Like she's a first year
Right.
student at a college,
Yes.
and
Yes.
then a bunch of other things. Yesterday we had someone who works as a consultant at Stoa come in, and he got on this call, and at the end of the call he said, hey, I would love to get on call with few some
Mhm.
of the fellows who were evaluating Stoa. And today morning I had in my email, hey, here are two calls, or here is one call I did, here are my notes, here are my insights, right? Like it's turnaround time is like 24 hours. Whereas
Right.
if in India, often I feel like, we will brainstorm some analysis paralysis,
Sure,
trying to
sure.
optimize for small things. So competence is really that, right? Like how do you get stuff done, get
No,
things done.
both the axes, and Mohan wants has asked for us for a hand sketch, so I just went ahead and put that on a post-it. I'm going to
Yeah.
call it the Aditya model, if that's okay.
Yeah, that is really a Raj model, but yeah, it's a store model. Let's
Well,
put it.
it's a store model. Let's make this the store model. But then what I really liked about it is both the competence and the hustle, the way you said it, right? You're putting it in the context of value that you're offering, right? And if you compare it with probably that kind of badging you said, I have the badge of a degree, but if I can't actually show the competence and achieve something for my stakeholder, my client, my customer, my employer, that's not really doing much, is it?
Yeah. So I mean, it is a proxy for competence, right? That badge is
Yeah.
some sort of proxy for competence. And I know like people love to people hit it when like job posting says only for IITians or only for BITSians or only for IIM folks. But increasingly, as I have been building store, what I've realized, it's proxy for something else. It is proxy for your ability to sort of keep going at something for 2 years. It is your proxy for
Indeed.
your ability. It's
Yes.
not really about those 4 years in college or 2 years at IIM. It's about that JEE or CAT stuff, right? Like it just shows
What it
that
takes, no? Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
this person can keep going at it for 2 years, right? Because
Yes.
that's what it
Yes.
takes to crack JEE. Or this person can keep going at something because CAT shows that 6 months this person put in an effort.
Yes. You know what that reminds me? That reminds me of the director of the MBA when I did my MBA in Cambridge, when I lived there. And part of my Cambridge MBA was funded by my employer. And someone asked me in the room, we were talking about this in the class, saying, so what are you going to do with the MBA? How do you know it's valuable? What is going to happen out as a result of it? And then our director looked at us and said, Shyam, your employer has already signaled to you. You've already gotten the value. The fact that you got partly funded for MBA itself is a signal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Itself is a badging, itself is a signal that you're in a good place. So that made me feel really good, actually. Maybe I didn't do very well in the class because of that, because I felt good anyway. But anyway, so tell us more about Stoa. So how are you kind of what I mean, I love the stuff you have on your website. For example, you say startups don't care for degrees. Why not? And what do you mean by that?
So, for example, I'll tell you some of the people who we have hired. Right, they're
Mhm.
not from. They don't really have the first shiny medals. In fact, some of our best people in Stoa, we hired them because we saw their proof of work.
Yeah.
They had their Twitter profile, or they had something on their LinkedIn, or they had something on their personal website, and they showed us what they could do for us even
Mhm.
before we hired them.
Yeah.
Right. So that is what is like startups care for proof of work. Ultimately, this is what it has come down to, right? Like it's very difficult to hire. If you put out a job posting, let's say on LinkedIn or AngelList, you're going to have like 500,000 people applying, right? And people don't really care at this point. I mean, even people who are applying on the other side, they don't even read through the job description, right? Like you posted something up, you have like just these bunch of resumes and bunch of messages
Yeah. Yeah.
there. But if I see something on the resume at the top, it says, here is my proof of work, here is a Notion doc, you can quickly go and check it out.
Yes. Yes.
I'm more interested. I'm like, hey, this person is cared about Stoa as a brand.
Yeah.
They really want to work for Stoa, right? Like,
Yeah.
uh, and it just doesn't really stop there, right? Like we have also said no to a bunch of folks. We've gone
Yes.
to the length of producing
Understood.
like 1-2 pages on Stoa because we probably did not see a role fit, or there were a bunch of
Of
other
course.
considerations. But when we say get startups to sort of chase you, it really comes down to showing how you can offer value to them, right? Like so,
Mm,
for example, I'm sure it is pretty competitive to get into cred, and
mm,
even for their internship, right? The bar keeps going up.
mm.
And in fact, if you've seen Pursuit of Happiness,
Yes.
uh,
Yeah. 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 Will Smith. Yeah.
yeah, what Will Smith does there, right? Like he goes, calls that
Indeed.
person,
Yeah.
gets like just skips the whole page and just calls up the CEO directly.
Just go straight to the top. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, goes straight to the top, goes to that game, pretends that he's taking his kid to the same game, gets into the box, makes bunch. That is hustle, by the way, right? Like that is like hustle in a cinematic world.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. It's almost something that no one else figured out. So, and
Yeah.
the thing with hustles is, you can know what the hustle is, but it takes some guts to do it, doesn't it? I mean, you can find like cold calling templates online and cold emails, but how many people actually do it, right?
Yeah, and this is the other thing about hustle, right? it probably means that if you hit up 10, 20 people, you probably will only hear from one.
Yeah.
But if you keep going at it and crack it, that shows you are a great salesperson because you have
Yeah.
gone through the funnel,
Yeah.
gone through the pain of emailing or sending DMs to like maybe 100 people, and 2 people responded.
Sure.
Out of it, one person got on a call, and
Yeah.
maybe even that did not convert, but you kept going at it. So it shows that the person is a great sales. And I think sales is a fundamental skill, right? Like not because you are getting into a sales role or something. I mean, job interview is
Yeah.
essentially a process of you selling
True.
your skills to someone. So in that,
And I found that if you're marketing yourself and selling yourself in the context of a job interview, I found that sales and marketing folks are the worst at it, but they are very, very good at selling stuff, products, services, technology. But why do you think that we find it so hard to sell ourselves and put ourselves out there? And is that changing?
uh, it's an interesting question, right? Like, why are people bad at selling themselves?
Yeah.
And I think it is cultural to an extent. You know, we are never told to talk about yourself. And,
Yep.
it's actually looked down in the culture. The second thing is, I think we don't intentionally practice it, right? How many of us, like,
Interesting.
if you just wake somebody up and say, hey, can you give me an elevator pitch about yourself? I'm pretty sure half the people will be like, oh, what? Like, but pitching yourself should really come down to practice and saying like,
Yeah.
hey, here is my 30-second elevator pitch, or this is my 10-second elevator pitch.
Beautiful.
Uh, yeah. But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, that's
absolutely.
at sales and marketing.
I mean, you're so spot on. I actually did exactly the same thing with one of my clients who's the head of marketing in the Silicon Valley, and we just said we need your 60-second pitch, and he just went to it for like 3 weeks, saying this is the hardest thing I've ever done.
Right.
But he's leading like massive technologies, and he's doing 60-second pitches for so many people. You know what? It's time to answer a few questions. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Let's take on.
Yeah, Shreyas says, how can a person with technical competency slowly move into a strategic position? Do we need qualification, or what exactly do we need to do for that shift? Well, you go first. I'll definitely add my thoughts as well.
So I'm going to be a little honest, and Shreyas, excuse me for saying this out. I think people increasingly are optimizing for these words, right? Like, I want to be a product manager, or I want to be in strategy, and it really doesn't mean anything. I mean, you get into a strategic position where you have done like at least 3 different things, and you have proven your competence across 3 different things. So for example, if I can get into a marketing project and execute that well, and then I get into a sales project and I execute that well, and I get into an operations sort of project and execute that well, then I'm qualified, because then my manager or my founder knows that, hey, if I give something to this person, he gets it done irrespective of what the project is. And then you are sort of capable, or you're looked at as this person could execute a larger long-term sort of goal. So what is strategy, right? Like, strategy is essentially your ability to plan for the long term. And that comes from demonstrating your ability to sort of deliver on the short-term promises. Even out of MBA, I don't think anybody gets into a strategy kind of thing directly. Like, it is taught at in MBA colleges.
Yes.
Those courses are fantastic because they give you an intellectual high, but nobody gets out of an MBA college and starts doing strategy, maybe except for like 10 people who get into McKinsey, BCG. And again, that too, their projects are very, very operational in nature, right? What they work on, not really like,
Largely
hey,
yeah.
it's largely suggesting owners what to do in terms of execution. So I essentially don't believe in optimizing for product management or strategy or stuff like that, right? Like, what I think everybody should be optimizing for is finding problems that excite you, and the growth will happen as a consequence of that. Because if you're really passionate about problem, let's say I'm really passionate about email, and I go to maybe Slack and says, here are the best features about email that should be built into Slack, and I want to work on it, and I want to chase this problem, and maybe they are working on it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key, right? Like, it's not about, hey, can I become product manager? It's really about, how can I find a problem that really excites me?
excites me. Yeah, and that's a wonderful connect to your original thought on the elevator pitch. Because if I don't have an elevator pitch of what I do and what I'm good at and what the world needs from me in that sense, then that match is never going to really come, is it?
Yeah.
It's wonderful, wonderful thought. Can I add
Eh,
just one question to this? No, go ahead, go ahead.
Sure, sure. Just let me complete the thought there. In
Yeah,
fact,
yeah,
today I
absolutely.
was reading this paper that Ogilvy wrote
Ogilvy, yeah,
about
yeah,
brand ideal, you know,
yeah,
and they talk in that paper. They talk about the brand's best self,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
which means the brand is not there yet today, but the brand is imagining what is my best self. And I think that applies to individual, because an individual is also a brand. And
Yes,
what is my ideal self? Like,
yes.
and they have this one line. I'll just find that one line out for you. Yeah, just give me a second.
No worries, no worries.
And that one line is really simple. It says
Mm-hmm.
that the brand, or
Mm-hmm.
let's say in this case Aditya, believes that the world would be a better place if I did this.
Yep.
The world would be a better place if I do this. And it is important.
Hi, Aditya. I think you've gone on a bit of a freeze mode. Could be an internet issue, folks. So let me just add to what Aditya was saying, right? So if I was to add to this and put in my thoughts as to what happens, Shreyas, for technical to strategic positions, the main challenge when you're going from any technical role, and when I say technical, I don't mean engineering, I mean marketing, sales, anything that is a functional role, into a more bigger, higher level strategic value added role for the organization, the one shift that happens is that you have to start getting things done through other people. So it's not just about what you do, it's not a task anymore. It's about really the value that you provide, right? And the value that you provide is largely multiplied. You leverage yourself through the people that work for you, right? So that big shift that happens. Hi, Aditya, welcome back.
Sorry, I
I
lost you
was
there.
just no worries. I was just saying that the bigger shift, one shift that happens from technical or functional roles into strategic positions, is the fact that the value comes through the people you lead. So that big shift has got to be. It's not about you anymore. It's about the people that you lead and the people that will benefit out of the decisions you make. For example, Jeff Bezos talks a lot about decisions. He says, "I need to make 2 or 3 good decisions a day. That's it. I'm getting paid for that." Right. So it's about moving into that space. So did you find your one-liner? Would you like to share that?
Oh, did you lose me there? Okay. So the
Yeah.
one liner was, the world would be an ideal place if I do
Oh, I'm
X.
sorry. You did say that. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. You did.
So
You
what is
did say
that
that.
X? Right? Like that was the
Got it. Got it. I've been through that entire journey myself, and I ended up with saying this: I am here to help you create magic at work. That's
right.
my 2 second pitch, and I love it. I love it because I relate very strongly to magic, and people say, "What does magic mean?" And say, "Let's start talking."
Sure.
So let's also look at a question from Saujanya. Saujanya, thank you for this question. So, in the current scenario, all startups are posting jobs on LinkedIn as well. And the job posting has features to eliminate the initially screened profiles. But then, how does this address your comment that startups don't really care for degrees? So, if they are screening for degrees, why do they not care?
Yeah. So I think there are two kinds of startups, right? And it is important to understand the difference. There are early stage companies who are hungry for talent, and then there are growth stage companies. Even if they are called startups, they're not really, they have gone past that Series B, Series C mark, and they're on a high growth trajectory. Uh, Sort of organizational structure is already happening. There are levels, the structure is not as flat as it is at, let's say, a seed stage company or a Series A company. And that's a good question. I think you have a much better chance at getting in if you sort of go for those seed, Series A, Series B companies, right? And those founders or the hiring partners or hiring managers at those companies are going to be much more responsive versus, let's say, somebody at Udan or somebody at Ola or somebody at Flipkart,
Yeah, yeah,
because the
yeah.
organizations have gotten so big that
Mm.
even within the human resources sort of team, I mean, all of these corporate practices have already started happening in some sense.
That leads me to the great question. Saujanya, thank you so much for this question because it leads me to the question: what is a startup? What is a startup?
Yeah.
do you even define? I mean, in the context of working in a startup, hiring. I mean, you know the context we're talking about. What's a startup in that context?
I mean, there are multiple ways this can be defined, right? Personally, I think a startup is something that is willing to fail in pursuit of a bigger goal, right? So people say all these things, fancy
Yeah.
stuff, oh, unicorn and this and that, right? So what is the difference between, in my opinion, life, and this is just strictly my own definition, right? When you're building a lifestyle business, and there is nothing wrong with building a lifestyle business. For example, you are building a lifestyle business. Stoa,
Hmm.
for most people, is a lifestyle business, but we are not really risking it all in pursuit of something
Mm.
really, right? Like, so we are not chasing after a particular number, let's say $1 billion valuation or a $10 billion valuation. Versus if you look at most these VC funded companies, right?
Mm.
mm, they are willing to fail. They are
Yep.
willing to go to zero in pursuit of that larger goal. So that's my personal definition. Then there are, all these words which are adjacent to each other: entrepreneurship and startup and so on and so forth. So
How interesting.
um, even if you're starting an agency, I don't technically think agency qualifies as a startup, right?
Hmm.
uh, because it is still.
How would you define an agency? What's an agency?
So for example, a service based model, right? Like I'm helping, let's say, other companies execute on their content marketing.
Hmm.
Now there is really no risk there apart from you being like really incompetent. Like, I mean, that's the only risk, right?
Genuine
Like,
risk.
yeah. But if you're competent, you're going to get clients, you're going to get paid, and
Yeah.
you're going
Yeah.
to sort of keep growing slowly over the years, right? Paul Graham actually came up with another definition, which is if you're not growing 10% month on month, then like, you're not a
Hmm.
startup or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't
Paul Graham's
exactly
blog,
remember.
highly recommended. Wonderful blog, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Right. So you gave me so much there. I'm just kind of digesting it. That is such a fantastic definition of saying that a startup is one where there is willingness and probably likelihood to fail. And once you've crossed that line, you're probably trying to protect the turf you already have, right? You're
Yeah.
more in a protective zone of you have a business that's running, you probably have a small cash cow that's already started, and now it's about protecting it. And if you're protecting
So,
the
so
business, then
the
you're minimizing
other
risk.
yeah, the other concept there is product market fit, right? So it is very pre-product market fit companies are typically your seed or series A companies,
Right.
and companies which have achieved some sort of product market fit are like, your series B, series C, because they have already figured out something that is working.
Working. Yeah, it's already working. Yeah,
They
yeah,
are
yeah,
trying to scale that, right?
yeah, yeah.
And when they're trying to scale it, then they're going to require people with proven abilities, and that is where your shiny medals again sort of come into play.
Right, right, right. And that answers Mohan Kumar's question, doesn't it? How do I spot seed stage startups? It's about product market. If the product market fit has already been established, it's probably gone a little further on, hasn't it?
I think there is a simpler answer to what Mohan is asking, and
Okay.
the answer is you read funding announcements. Right? They
That's it.
usually say, "Hey, this is our seed round," or "This is our pre-series A or series A."
So
Right? Like,
Apna is not seed stage anymore.
Apna is not seed stage. So
Yes, exactly. I mean, how many unicorns are there in India now? I've lost track.
I think it has crossed 50
Amazing.
or something like that.
Yeah,
That's my sense.
outstanding. It's just such an interesting time we're living in. It's kind of taken over the entire kind of dialogue around work, right? Because when I started my career, it was all about did you get into a big established organization. If you did not get into a big established organization, you had failed. Your degree was utterly useless.
Right.
And now it's so many things, and actually that leads us to Rishabh Gurbani's question. And if you don't mind, I'll have a go at it first because I
Yeah.
have a thought here I'd like to share. How can someone present their work in multiple fields? Basically, if someone comes looking for me for one role, how to ensure they find exactly what they've come for and not distracted by the other works. This is something a lot of us grapple with. We generalists grapple with. I am a generalist myself, and I teach and coach at Stoa myself. And all of us who feel that we have multiple skills grapple with this question. One of my favorite models is from Scott Adams, Dilbert, the creator of Dilbert. He wrote this blog post a very long time ago, saying that it's very, very hard for you to become 1% at something. And that's when you become really, really good at it. And by nature of the definition of it, 99% of us will not get there. Yeah. Instead, it is really, really much easier to become top 25% at a couple of things, or maybe even three things. So, do you know what the two or three things are? Forget the one that you might not be the best at, but do you know two or three things that you're really, really good at? Forget 25 also. What are you really, really good at? And this is something we talk about a lot. I mean, me with my clients, with the people I work with, saying two things, three things. It's okay. But to your question, Rishabh, and it's a fantastic question, not everybody needs to know that, right? So right now in this conversation, Aditya and I are playing roles of talking about startups and jobs. We have so many other sides to us. We're not talking about it because in this moment we need to present a certain brand, a certain position. We are here to serve you in this 1 hour to talk about startups. So everything else is relegated to the background. So that comes with practice, because you need to know what the people you're talking to, I think, need in that moment, and project just that part of you. It doesn't mean you've lost all the other sides of you, but it's about projecting the right part of you that adds value to the other person in that moment. So that's kind of my response to that. Aditya, what would you add?
I actually, you as you were talking through this, right? Like a very interesting analogy came to my mind.
Yeah.
It's people ask this question, "What is your drink?" Right, and everybody has a different answer to that.
Yeah.
Now, some people might like their drink to be just like like need one particular thing, right?
Mhm.
And that is
Yeah.
one skill that you are like, hey, this is my thing, right? This is my drink, right? Like I get content marketing and I get it done. Now that is one kind of drink. The other drink could be a mixer, right? Which
Yes.
is, hey, I know content marketing a bit. I also know SEO, and I also know performance marketing. So I've
Sure.
stacked skills, right? So instead of saying, hey, I'm really top 1% in this particular skill, you say, hey, here is my skill stack. And in each of these things, if not in the top 1%, I'm in the top 10%.
Yeah.
So that drink becomes interesting to, let's say, a hiring manager, right? Because
Yes.
you have stacked skills. And I think, and then it comes back to elevator pitch, right? Like, what is your drink? You should explain that, right? Like, what is your mojo in some sense?
Yes. Yes.
In that elevator pitch, hey, are you like that neat drink kind of guy, or are you like a mixer, cocktail, mocktail kind of guy, right? Like, good.
Yeah. 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 No, I like the drinks analogy. We should continue with that. It's way more interesting than mine.
Yeah.
But
No,
it's great.
it's,
Because
it's an interesting thing. I think एक LinkedIn post बनता है इस पे. What is your drink? It's like
day 49 of day 50 of 100 days of MBA. Why
100
not?
days of MBA. Yeah,
You have
yeah,
content idea here.
yeah.
One more thing that comes to mind when you talk about mixing drinks and things is, they say innovation lies at the intersections. So instead of getting too hung up on one skill, you can also start playing with two things at once. For example, for me, I'm happy to share is that I'm a coach and a trainer. So I spend a lot of time in the facilitative kind of training space as well as coaching. So my kind of two skills are coach trainer. Am I the best coach in the world? No. Am I in the top 1% of training? No. Am I a very good coach plus trainer? Yes. That's the way I talk about my work. And that comes from kind of really reflecting on it, but also getting feedback on where these things really mix. So I like the mixer analogy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Janya says more relatable as well. Your drinks analogy is working, Aditya. LinkedIn post तो definitely बनता है.
Right.
Right. Mohan spoke about spotting. Saujanya had one more question. In continuation to Mohan's question, how do we spot them? Would they be attracted to other with profiles with previous experience in startups?
Yeah, I mean, there are a bunch of things. Like let's put. I mean, the easiest thing you can do, right, when thinking of a particular job or whether to apply or whether to cold email or not, is there is this simple practice, and I think everybody has heard about the word, which is empathy. You can literally put yourself in the shoes of a hiring manager or a founder
Yeah. Yeah.
and just go across the table, do that role play, and say, hey, if I were building this company and this company is doing this and it has raised so much money and this founder comes from here or this HR acquisition manager comes from this background, here are all the kind of people that work for this company. Just basic research, right? Given
Yeah.
that, if I send them this email, if I send them my resume, what would they look for? And I think this is a sort of very well kept secret in the MBA world, is whatever you do, it needs to have a spike, right? Like your typical McKinsey and BCGs will say, hey, like, where is the spike in the resume, right? Like, where is something that really gets me interested in this person.
Right.
And that spike again, right? And it is so interesting that we keep coming back to the same point, which is elevator pitch. You need to demonstrate in first 10 seconds. It's almost like a TikTok or an Instagram reel, right? Like first 10 seconds, how do you grab attention? What is it that people are like, hey, I need to get on a call with this person. I need to at least understand their story, right?
Yes. Yes.
uh, it's really about that. Like, will I enjoy a conversation with this person and why? I mean, I might just be curious, right? So for example, sometimes I'm sure founders get on a call with person because that person has worked at a competitor. So they want to know, like, what did the competitor actually do? How did they figure out a particular problem?
Yeah.
It could be that, or it could be, so for example, at Stoa, we love to talk to game designers. We love to talk
Right.
to production, people who have been in video production,
Mhm.
because you have taught at Stoa, so you know why I'm saying that, right? Like, because it comes down to, hey, how do I produce a learning session at Stoa? What can help me produce this session better, right?
Yes. Yes.
And that is
Yes.
why I want to talk to a game designer. That is why I want to talk to a video producer. That is why I
Wow.
want to talk to a
That's
storyteller.
mind blowing.
Yeah. So
And
just
that's such
that
a different
empathy,
way
right?
of. That is such a different. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I can't hide my excitement. That's such a different way of looking at education because you're saying it is after all a production. So let's learn it from people who produce.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So if you see in your case, right, Sham, Pratha's role was to be a executive producer,
Yes.
right?
Agreed. Yeah.
And so when we talk to our learning experience designers, we tell them, hey, you are an executive producer in this. And then there
Yeah.
is this news anchor or there is this facilitator who needs to go there
Wow.
and perform.
Wow.
And it's a 60-minute performance, right? Like what you do for leadership at Stoa is a
Yes.
60-minute performance. You take a case, you push people to think about it, and so on and so
It is so wonderfully put. I mean, it is at a deep level, it is a performance. And for the folks who are listening, and if Pratha, you're here, Pratha Shetty, he's a wonderful instructional designer and producer, and we struck it so well and did the leadership program and organizational behavior programs at STOA. But that partnership is so wonderfully put, and it takes some real kind of out of the box thinking to look at it that way, right? Because if you go back 10 years also, I don't, if you go back to like a university professor and say, where's your executive producer? They'll be like, what are you talking about?
yeah, yeah.
Right.
In fact, I'll tell you, right? So when the first time we experimented with this idea was, I was writing a brief for a game theory session. Hmm? And I said, and by the way, these, whatever I'm telling, are actually good practices for you to get work done, right? Like, and that is why I'm saying that. So I said, hey, if I have to design a session on game theory, what
Right.
are the 5 questions that my student should know the answer for?
Mm-hmm.
And then I went about writing down those 5 questions and getting really to 5 questions. Maybe it started with 10, eliminating, combining, blah, blah, blah. We got to 5 questions. I said, now I have to deliver a 60-minute session on this. I have 5 segments. I have 5 questions. I need to design 5 segments, almost like, if you have watched Friends or any of the sitcoms. It's like,
Yes.
oh, this segment is going to be 5 minutes. This segment is going to be 10 minutes. This segment needs to have this opening sequence. This segment
Yeah.
needs to have this middle. This is the segue into the next segment, and blah blah blah, and this is how my 60-minute session is done, right?
Yes.
uh,
Yes. Yes.
and
It's that whole product management.
making magic happen at work, right? It is so interesting where you can draw inspiration from. You can draw inspiration from
Yeah.
movies, you can draw inspiration from film production,
Indeed. Indeed.
you can draw inspiration from sports,
Yes.
you can draw inspiration from army, the whole Navy SEAL training, and like how can you train yourself better, fitness. Just yeah, I
Yes.
think I went on a rant there, but
No, it was a wonderful rant. We love your rants. I love it. Um, Folks, if you love Aditya's rants, just give us yes. We love his rant. More rants, please, in the comments, please. So you know why I love the word magic, and I use it a lot in my work. Aditya, is I had this person I used to work with. He used to work in the R&D department of our company, and he used to say, "What do you do?" He said, "I do magic," and I'm like, "What do you mean? You're an R&D man. What do you mean magic?" So we had engineering and production and all of that, and then we had the R&D department. So he said, "I do stuff none of you think is still possible."
Hmm.
And I'm like, aha, okay, now I get it. If I take a mobile phone, if I take this back 20 years and say I'm doing all this stuff on my phone, everyone will call it magic because nobody will get it, right? Just the way we look at space travel or time travel or whatever, whatever is going to be possible. So it just opens our ideas. It's just opens up your mind to new things. So I love that. I love that. Right. Right. More rants, please, from Sachin Nair. Right. So, I'll give you a moment to get your next rant in place. Before that, let's also talk to Sujay Patil's question. Let's talk about this. Since blockchain space is new and growing faster every day, any thoughts on how to pursue a career in blockchain crypto? Do you have any thoughts on this?
So, in general, I don't know much about the space, yeah, to be very honest. But my sense is this, that the space is huge, right? Like, so you need to understand what kind of application excites you, what is a problem that really excites you in blockchain, right? Like, it could be smart contracts. I don't know. There are things that people talk about, like NFTs and DAOs, and or there could be cryptocurrency, right? Like maybe it is Ethereum and Ethereum protocol, I think, or a proof of stake to proof of whatever, right? There are a bunch of concepts, but what is
Yep.
a problem that genuinely excites you? And one thing that I warn people against is, I mean, it is good, both a good thing and bad thing. And Raj actually did a fantastic workshop on this,
Right.
which was around trend surfing, right? It is good to trend surf, but it could also kill you,
Hmm.
right? Because you don't want to be uh, surfing a new trend every 2 3 years.
Yeah.
You need to figure out a stuff and then commit few years to that,
Hmm.
right? And just because if blockchain is growing faster every day and that is the only reason you are interested in space, maybe you have not scratched the surface, you have not
Right.
gone deep enough. And Sujay, I mean, I'm making assumptions, right? Like, I'm sure you must have gone deeper into it. I'm just saying that you need to really go deep and find out what is a problem that excites you. And it is so interesting, right? Like the moment you get interested in problem, you try solving for it. That brings in competence,
Yeah.
that leads to your competition, your elevator pitch, that leads to hustle. Because once you have a good elevator pitch, you will know how to hustle, you will know how to get into conversations, how to strike up conversations, right? The other thing about this, I think, in coming back to how to get jobs to chase you, right, that where we started, I think it is also about finding out which is a public square where if you talk things, people will listen to you. And this is again something that I picked up from Raj.
Love it.
And this
Yeah.
is a advice that Raj gives, right, to a lot of people. So let's say you start talking about a particular problem that you're interested in LinkedIn. You have 300 connections. No one really cares about what you have to say. Yeah, because you have gone to some corner in a city and you're shouting there where there is nobody,
Yes.
right? And everybody is on MG Road, or everybody is, in
Yes.
Indiranagar, or in the, whatever Connaught Place or whatever, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so you need to figure out what is the Connaught Place of this industry, what is the MG Road of this industry, and how can I get conversation started there? It could be maybe LinkedIn comments of on a Kunal Shah post. It could be a LinkedIn or a Twitter reply on, let's say,
Yeah.
Balaji Srinivasan's. So you need to figure out what is the public square and how do you sort of get your point across in a public square. Which means normally on social media, when you do personal branding, you need to start in replies and comments and not in
And
original
that
content.
makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, of course, you need to do that as well, but that is
Hmm.
not going to bring you results as much as, let's say, a reply or a comment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's how you slide into DMs. That is
Yeah.
how you get the conversation started, and so on. So,
I mean, this is such a wonderful way of looking at the noisy world we live in the sense that, I know some people who start websites and go to some quieter places because they start their website and say, here's where I am.
hmm.
That's one strategy. Or the other strategy is to go into that LinkedIn group or, whatever Facebook group or wherever it is that space is very active, because that is where they are. One of the analogies I use, for example, especially with the Chennai audiences, if you want silk saris, you go to T Nagar, okay? You go to Ranganathan Street. You don't go to like Perambur or something, which is the locomotive area, by the way. You don't start a silk sari shop in the middle of where all the, carriages are made for the Indian Railways. You go to T Nagar because that's where you are. Yes, you are one among 50 shops, but that's where all the shops are, right? You got to
Right.
be at the town square. And it's scary, right? It's scary because there's so many people there, there's so much noise, there's so many opinions already. But if you want to be seen, you got to go where the likes of you are. I think that's a really strong point.
And the other way, I think, coming back to the same point, right? If you are in public square and you're putting yourself out there, it is very likely that you will make a fool out of yourself. You will fail a bunch of times,
True.
and that's okay, right? So the other aspect of how you get people to chase you is just your willingness to fail and make a fool out of yourself, and not to take yourself too seriously, right? Like, oh, how are people going to judge me? And like,
Yes.
and I sometimes feel asking stupid questions is such a superpower, right?
Yeah.
Because you're willing to put yourself out there. And I mean, if you start with stupid questions, and then you reflect and say, hey, why did I ask that? Like, I must have come across as an idiot. Next time, your question is going to get better and better and
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that is true of entrepreneurship as well, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, yes, two exits and all that. There is sticker, and with every new thing that I'm building, I basically think like, "Arey, 3 years back, I was such an idiot," right? And if you're not thinking that you were an idiot yesterday, right? Like,
You are not growing, no?
you're
Yeah.
not you're not doing that 2 by 2 metrics,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. You're not doing the 2 by 2 matrix, right? And you're probably in a comfort zone where you're not looking back and say, I made a mistake. Because unless you're making mistakes, you're probably in a bit of a comfort zone. One of the things that people keep telling me is, I'm feeling stuck. I'm feeling stuck. I'm feeling stuck. So the next question, the wonderful question to ask yourself, I think, when was that last time you made a mistake? Right? Well, this is my real lucky day for two reasons, Aditya. One, you came and joined me. And second, at least one person liked my joke. Raja, you've made my day, man. Thank you. Excellent, excellent. Right. There was one question I may have missed from Shreyas. Let's look at this. Did we answer this? I don't think so.
No, we didn't.
What do angel investors look for in startups? Ideas, founders, industry? Do you have any thoughts on this?
It's a very loaded question, right? That's
Mm,
because again, it's like the drink kind of analogy, right?
yeah.
Uh, if a founder has a solid sort of proof of work behind him or her, they're going to deal with investors, or investors are going to deal with them in a very different way, right? I fundamentally don't think that it's just about idea. It's
Mhm.
typically idea plus something, right? So it is idea plus proof of work for the founder, or it is idea plus team, or it is idea plus traction, which means you already have few users using you, and so on and so on. So I think idea is a very small part of it, and it's a very loaded question, right? Like, because investing is not like a very rational, Excel based model, right? A lot of it is gut, and a lot of it is what could be, what is possible, and whether I like that space, and whether I have a thesis, and whether I like the founder, and so many other things, right? Like, so I don't think there is
Yeah, 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 yeah.
it's a
Fair enough.
loaded question.
I think it's a really complicated question. And interesting you said the gut, right? One of the decision making models I use a lot, especially to help people through their difficult decisions, is this head, heart, and gut model. They say, use your head, follow your heart, listen to your gut. What
Mm.
happens is sometimes one of them goes out of whack, or one of them just takes over. For example, for me, when I wanted to take some life decisions, my mind just takes over. I put spreadsheets and numbers and like everything. And at some point in time, the heart kind of is lost. So it's like, is my heart really in this moment? For example, everyone talks about smart goal setting, right? And smart goal setting is a very, very head wala type of
Yeah.
goal setting, right? It's very rational and hard. The alternative I use sometimes is something called hard goal setting, HARD, where
Okay.
I don't remember the ARD. We'll have to Google it. But the H is heartfelt. It's like, is your heart in it? Is your heart in this goal? If your heart is not in it, you're not going to do it. It can be specific, measurable, actionable, result oriented, and time bound, but it will not happen because your heart is not in it. So I like to use that hard model sometimes.
Yeah. No, makes sense, right? And I think that is again the thing with trends, right? So
Hmm.
when you're chasing trends, your heart might not be into it.
Yeah, you're just kind of following that wave, no? And I love, what thought I came to me when you were talking about trend surfing is, more than the trend itself or the surfing the actual trend, you have to choose your beach first. Which beach are you at? Are
Ah,
there lots of trends coming? Are there loads of waves coming? The thing is, you'll ride some trend and you'll get there, but you have to choose. This is the blockchain. I'm committed to blockchain for 5 years. I'll catch one of these trends. I'm committed to product management for 5 years. I think the big difficulty nowadays is picking and sticking because the choices are just crazy. How do you handle? What are your thoughts on choices? Yeah, it's like I can't handle it. I had to be a doctor and an engineer. I hate the sight of blood, so I became an engineer. Bottom line, that was it.
So I think you at least need one person who can give you a reality check, right? And I think that's why coaching is such a beautiful thing. Uh, because our heads are full of clutter.
Yeah,
Like just there is so much. You're watching Instagram reels, you're on LinkedIn, you're on Twitter, maybe there is so much happening in your company and so on. Like your head is just full of so much. And then you're hearing about these what $1 million valuation and $1 billion valuation, and you are hearing all these fancy words, or a startup, yay, whoa, hustle, generalist, founder's office, chief of staff, product management, and uh, and what that means is you could be like really great key account manager,
yeah.
but you end up becoming a bad product manager. And that is not, I mean, that's the problem with just trend surfing and choice and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's
somebody to
hard.
give you reality check, somebody to help you declutter the space, uh, right? I think that's really important. Somebody to basically call you on your bullshit.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, being a mirror, right? Being a mirror, calling your BS, kind of pointing out your flaws. By the way, that TED talk by Amit Gawande, the American surgeon, "Do You Need a Coach?" I think it's called. It's amazing. I mean, he talks about he's like a top line surgeon in the US, and he talks about why he got a coach and how he got a coach. One of the most watched TED talks. But yeah, I completely agree with you. Coaches are great, right?
No, and the other thing is you need to understand how to go through the coaching process. So a lot of challenge I see with
Possible.
early or even mid stage folks is, I mean, coaching is not just about going. It's not therapy. It's not
Oh,
therapy.
it's not
So
therapy. No, no, it's very true. Very true.
so you need to go come back with few things that you will do, and then actually do it and go for the next session. And
You got
so
to make
how
it work.
to utilize coaching, I think that's also a skill that many people, I mean, you need to commit to the process, surrender to the process, and make sure you're going through it.
It's exact opposite to how you said you design a class, right? Where you go to the outcome and then you figure out work backward and say, what do I need to get to this outcome? It really coaching is like opening up the possibilities and saying what is actually even possible for me. And exactly as you said, not knowing what the outcome is, committing to the process that may or may not get you there, and trusting the process and the coach and being open to go through that opening up process and saying, I cannot yet envision the best possible future for me, help me figure it out. Having that kind of opening up is so important. um, Maybe this is an opportunity to talk a bit more about Stoa, Aditya. Jeevan's asking, how do you find choose your co-founders? Majorly, what are the core aspects, and apart from enthusiasm and the fire?
Again, it's a very loaded question, right? Because it goes very deep. I think the fundamental thing about choosing co-founders is whether your values and outlook towards life and life stages, all of those things match. I mean, it's almost like marriage, right? Like, I mean, I know it's a very cliched thing, but and it's a very difficult thing to say whether your values match if you have not worked before together, right? So, for
Mm,
example, you could be friends with somebody from college, and I mean, friendships are great and so on and so forth. But when you actually start getting your hands dirty, and the sort of the trough sort of comes in those moments, we reveal when we are not at our best, right? And we
mm,
reveal something about ourselves.
yeah.
And I'm not just saying the other person reveals, you also reveal something that is not so good about yourself, right? And in that moment it matters where your values, your life stage. So for example, let's say if I'm married and I have two kids and they're going to college or school or whatever, and like I'm sending them to fancy schools, and I have an EMI on my head and so on and so forth. My approach when, let's say, a trough sort of comes in is going to be maybe panic, right? That is just because there are just so many responsibilities.
Yes.
Uh, and then there might be a 25-year-old co-founder in the same company who's like, what is wrong with this person? Right? Like, why is he? Because he doesn't get where this 35-year-old person
Yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah.
So, so life stages, values, your outlook towards money.
Yes, indeed.
Uh, because see, everybody says that I want to build a company and blah blah, but are you really driven by these fancy valuations and exits versus you are really there to build a legacy? a lot of conflicts are around that, right? Because if you're optimizing for the short term, you will play the game very differently. If you're optimizing for an exit, if you're optimizing for the long term, you will do things very differently, right? So and it's not an easy conversation per se, even between co-founders. So for example, if you look at Stoa, we know we want to build something for the long term, but then there are always short term priorities in terms of hey, what happens to my next cohort, and what do I need to do to make sure that my admissions thing is rolling and we are getting the best of students in Stoa, and so on and so forth. So, and those conversations are hard, right? Like those conversations are hard. So it's difficult, but I mean, some thumb rule: if you've worked together before and you've gone through few fights together, and when I say not just interpersonal fights, but like projects which
Yep.
really demanded something of you, that's a good sign, right? Because then you know how the person is going to react when you go to the battle or war or whatever it is.
You know what to expect. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what to expect. So some previous work history does help, or in case of Stoa, for example, right? Like, so we started the company and we met for the first time as co-founders a year into our journey. We had never met each other, but the cultural context was Bits, right? We both, or
Yeah.
even Manoj, all of us came from Bits. So for example, I had not spoken to Manoj after we graduated, right? So 2009, I spoke to Manoj
Right.
in 2020, 11 years
That
later.
common connect is still there, no? Such a
But
strong
there's
one.
common friends, there is some common culture, we came from the same place, so we understand, like, we understand what OB5 might mean, what
Yes,
A3
yes.
might mean, and what life experiences this
That's
person
Bitsian
might.
lingo. B5
Yeah.
is physics and A3 is electronics, which is what I did. I want to pick up on the community thing because I just saw 2 days ago Raj posted and you had uh, reposted, retweeted. No, what is it?
Yeah,
LinkedIn reposted or whatever.
yeah.
I don't know.
Shared, yeah.
Shared. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And this is some of the signaling that comes from Stoa, and I know that you really value the sense of community you create. So, cohort 4, you're hiring right now, and not hiring, sorry, you're open for admissions into cohort 4, and you have people from TCS, Ernst and Young, Oracle, Unacademy, Amazon, Byju's, Zomato, Zoho, Freshworks, Barclays, Bank of America, Google, and so many other organizations. And that sense of community that you're trying to create across people who come from so many different spaces. Tell us about the sense of community that you create and why is it so important nowadays?
Yeah. So I think the largely the credit goes to our community team, right? Like Shelton and Nikaya, and then of course Raj, me, Manoj. We have been very
Yeah.
supportive of them. But I think the most fundamental problem today is loneliness. And if you look at most businesses, or if you look at some of the very interesting businesses that are getting built, right? So for example, Replit, it's a coding platform.
Mm.
They have a solid community, and that's because, or Reddit or Twitter, all of these are fundamentally communities.
Yep. They are, aren't they? Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, there aren't really like a lot of business models, right? Because the fundamental human psychological needs, or even let's say material needs, are fundamentally the same. I mean, you don't go on Amazon because it's a marketplace. You go on Amazon because you like to buy stuff and you want to
Right.
buy,
Right.
right?
Right.
In that sense, community is not something new. I mean, it might be the fancy new word, or cohort based courses might be the new fancy word. But that need for belonging,
Yeah.
that need to find, and I remember, there is this very famous Marathi writer, Pula Deshpande. He passed away a long time back. But in one of his speeches, he mentions that Bhartruhari, in one of his Sanskrit dramas, mentions that why am I like this and why can't I find another person like me? And like, so that's
Wow. Yeah.
kahan se hai wo, right? Like it's such
Yeah.
a dated sort of emotion, if you will, which
Yeah.
is.
But very topical right now in today's day. Yeah.
So I think fundamentally community is important because all of us are searching for, because the other part of it, and I'm not sure about, even our generation. But I think people who are in their 20s or early 20s,
Right.
that I mean, religion in some sense is not the pillar it used to be, right? A lot of, I mean, your physical environment is not the same it used to be, right? Like,
Yep.
I don't know, like many people even know what it is like to have an angan for their house, right? Like, and it
Yeah,
is,
like a garden, no, like an out courtyard or what? Yeah,
yeah, courtyard like that, right?
yeah,
All
veranda
of
front.
them,
Yeah,
or just walking into neighbor's house and sorry,
yeah, it's very different world nowadays. Yeah, for sure.
just sorry, yeah.
No worries. No, that's a fantastic point. We are nearing our the end of our time together, and there's just a few things I wanted to pick up. Right, a few things that you said. Just now, you said the community, and I cannot agree more. I have seen what you do in store. I've spent time with cohort 2 and cohort 3 right now, and look forward to working more with you. The sense of community is so powerful, and it can drive you to do things, and it can create the sense of energy around you that is probably missing in a largely remote world. The other thing you said, no, and I want to finish on this note, if that's okay, Aditya, is the word optimizing. You use the word optimizing quite often, and I'm picking up on that word a lot nowadays. What are you optimizing for? Are you optimizing for this, for money, for relationships, and I think what you're doing is optimizing for community at Stoa, right? And I would also like to say that if you're talking about your own brand, folks, and if you want startups to hire you, you need to optimize on your brand. You need to optimize on who you are. You need to put yourself out there. Optimize on yourself and who you represent to the world. And I'm sure that you'll attract all the positive energy. Aditya, thank you so much for joining me here today. You have been an absolutely fantastic guest. And if we can have you again, I'm sure people will join and watch you rant again. That's okay.
Happy to come back, Sham. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, whoever was listening in. Really appreciate you being here. And thank you, Sham, for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aditya. Until next time. Bye bye.
Bye bye.